Namaste. Before we start, a disclaimer. The ideas discussed in this video are solely based on religions that have originated in the subcontinent. Additionally, I have not delved into the differing nuances among the various Astika traditions of the Vedas, focusing instead on overarching concepts shared across these traditions. With that in mind, let's explore the purpose and power of religion. The primary objective of human endeavor has been to reduce or maybe even remove suffering. Different societies have sought different solutions for this. The most modern extensions of civilizations have predominantly focused on implementing technology for this purpose. A large chunk of this effort has further been directed towards increasing comfort and longevity of life. All socio-political and economic activities have been directed towards addressing these aspects and hence reduce suffering by improving the quality of life. The role of religion has been no different. Let's analyze. Let's first understand suffering. Everyone has felt it in different magnitudes at different times for different durations. If one were to critically analyze the nature of suffering, what becomes abundantly clear is that all suffering emanates from separation. It is the absence of either a person or comfort or material or dignity, among others, that causes pain and suffering. Modern thought catches on to this pretty quickly and hence pursues different ways to either prevent, mitigate, or cure the causes. However, as is quite often observed, the barrage of immediate reasons that cause suffering do not seem to stop. They keep coming one after the other, sometimes even together. Multiple strains of thoughts that have originated in this Indian subcontinent focused on finding the root cause of all suffering and hence address those root causes. There were some strains like the Charvakas who stopped at the symptomatic stages, declared their disbelief of the cycle of life and death, and hence focused on relieving themselves of suffering as they came. There were others who dug deeper, like Buddha. Buddha identified that the root cause of all suffering was desire. Yes, separation did cause suffering, but why? Because there existed a desire in that life for that entity that had been separated. Buddha therefore designs methods to overcome desires from all worldly objects, extinguish the desire, and the separation would not hurt anymore. A very elegant and simple solution indeed. However, while effective, the process to achieve a state that is devoid of desire is strenuous and requires incredible discipline. The Vedas, Upanishads, and their derivative schools of thought, also called darshanas, dug even deeper beyond desires. They realized that instead of putting in so much effort to distinguish desires, they could instead decrease their relevance. What gave the desire so much importance was the association that it enjoyed with the actor's identity. And hence, the true cause of suffering, beyond even desires, was the identity of the individual that they associated with themselves. The individual was either a man or a woman, a husband or a wife, a friend or a foe. Most times, there were multiple of these identities. Most of all, to them, they were their ego. Now, here, ego is not to be confused with arrogance. It is the inherent identity of the individual in the absence of all other roles they donned. Their association with the quote unquote I that encompass their actions and choices. When the identity of an individual is restricted to this ego of theirs, the desires attached to this ego gains significant relevance. Their entire world would therefore revolve around these desires and hence naturally result in immense pain and suffering when unfulfilled. Indian rishis therefore advocated the dissolution of the individual's ego so that the individual would now identify with the universal state of consciousness, also called the Parabrahma. When the individual's ego dissolves into the Parabrahma, their desires lose their former relevance and glory. The individual will no longer experience suffering since they have internalized the reality of who they truly are. because from then on, they know that they are the all-encompassing. Their actions would now be inspired by the desires of the Parabrahma. Before we go forward, let's first understand a very critical characteristic regarding desires. That they are all driven by the fundamental desire to preserve and grow. If the characteristic remains true for all of life, it must also be the case for the universal consciousness as well. And hence, on dissolution of the ego, the individual's actions would become aligned with that of the universe and therefore would be aligned with preserving and growing the universe as well. The individual, now functioning as a vessel for the universal will, can contribute to the world in a way that benefits all beings, guided by a higher, more universal understanding of reality. Lord Krishna, during the Mahabharata war, explains exactly this to a dejected Arjuna, who is deep in confusion and agony. Arjuna laments over his desire to enjoy his birthright to be the cause of the war in front of him. He is afraid about the ramifications of the impending war and finds himself responsible for it. He considers choosing inaction to solve all the suffering and pain that the immediate future beheld. Lord Krishna identifies the root cause of Arjuna's suffering to be born out of his sense of control over his actions. Arjuna, Lord Krishna says, misjudges his own identity and that of his peers. He assumes that the actions he is about to undertake are those of the body he identifies with. The solution to this is to pull Arjuna out of his illusion that it is he who is doing the killing or that it is his kin who are getting killed. This, as Lord Krishna explains, is because Arjuna and his kin were never just Arjuna and his kin alone. They have always been a part and yet the whole of the Parabrahma, who have simply donned the momentary role in these bodies. Just as a pot made of clay is still mud, albeit in a different form, if the identity of the pot were restricted to just being the pot, any damage to the pot in its current form would cause it immense pain. But if it realized that its essence is that of mud, which can be shaped into any form, the desire to remain in the same form would become irrelevant and thus suffering would cease. Lord Krishna therefore advises Arjuna not to be troubled by the consequences of his actions as long as they align with Dharma. Side note, Dharma is that which preserves, upholds and sustains the universe. Moving forward, to achieve the state of detachment from the fruits of his actions, Arjuna must let go of his own ego, let it dissolve and become one with the universal consciousness. Lord Krishna acknowledges the difficulty of reaching that state of detachment and hence suggests another alternative. Rather than striving tirelessly to attain the knowledge of non-duality, one can instead choose the path of bhakti. One can thus detach from suffering by surrendering everything, including all personal identifications, to the Parabrahma. In bhakti, one surrenders completely, experiencing a deep mutual love and adoration between the Parabrahma or a form of it and the devotee. The journey continues until the realization dawns that the protector and the protected were always one and the same. Yet this love is so pure, so boundless, that it takes on a magnificence of its own. It does not merely remove suffering, but rather it fills the bhakta with such intense, immense joy that the absence of suffering becomes irrelevant. The bhakta is no longer concerned with what has been taken away, only immersed in an unspeakable, all-encompassing bliss. Where then does this suffering originate from? We've already established that suffering arises from separation. But separation from what? If the individual and Parabrahma are of the same essence, why should their apparent separation cause pain and suffering? This paradox is key to understanding the nature of suffering. The illusion of separation, despite the fundamental oneness of the individual and the universal consciousness, is the root cause of suffering. The individual's identification with their limited ego creates the illusion of distance from the Parabrahma, and it is this very illusion that causes pain. To transcend this suffering, one must overcome this false sense of separation. By dissolving the ego and reducing the distance between the individual self and the universal consciousness, one returns to a state of unity where the eternal bliss of oneness with the Parabrahma is realized. This, in essence, is the true purpose and power of religion. The journey of overcoming suffering is ultimately a journey of self revelation, one that goes beyond mere intellectual understanding to a lived experience of unity with the universal consciousness. The dissolution of the ego, the realization that we are not separate from the Parabrahma but are the very essence of it, leads to the cessation of all suffering. By recognizing the illusion of separation, we cease to be defined by the fleeting desires of the ego, and instead our actions become aligned with the greater will of the universe. In this state of unity, we experience not only freedom from suffering, but the eternal bliss that comes with the knowledge that we are a part of a vast interconnected whole. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this video insightful, please like, comment, and share it with others who might be interested. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more in-depth discussions.